And we're back here once again with another episode of the MSK show. And this is going to be episode 33. And I will be doing another segment of Indie Creator Spotlight presenting X Person. And the indie creator that I will be spotlighting in this episode is going to be Miss Dante Terese, actually. How you doing, man? Hello.
I am doing good.
That's awesome. So,
Thank you for
you know,
having me.
yeah, yeah. So your first time here, so we'll just start from the very beginning. How was your life growing up, actually?
Let me see. It was a little strange, and and I guess everyone can say that. Um, and so I wound up writing a crazy book that was based on my life.
Hmm.
That's the first book with the spicy title. Not a lot of spice though. And you're out there on the left coast, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've spent most of my life around sort of East Coast, but I did go to South Dakota for 5 years, and I discovered what snow really is.
Hmm.
Um, but um, I told you about that when I was talking to you about having like snow that was 4 feet tall in this one town I
Yeah,
lived in, and then 4 feet more coming down.
yeah. So in our town, it's very rarely snows here. It's only snowed here, from what I remember, as a record of like three times actually. The very first time we had ever had snow here was when I was in eighth grade, and I was back in like 2008, actually.
Hmm.
So yeah, snow was weird because I was like, why are my feet were so cold? That's why I couldn't stand the snow. My feet got way too cold. I was like, I can't do this. I'm old. Sorry, my body's already falling apart then.
Well, I remember in this one town that I lived in, we had it was interesting. Some of the apartments, the first floor apartments in this one town that were in between houses would
Mhm.
rent for like 300 a month. And I'd be like, what? 300 a month for like a really nice whole floor apartment? I'm like, wow, why? Well, about 9 months out of the year, that town is pretty much buried in snow, and it covers the first floor windows, so these people don't have any view but snow. It'll drive you nuts. But I remember once that on the news they made an emergency. There were sirens going off, everything, and I was like, "Uh-oh, what's happening?" It turns out that everything, the temperature was going to go up over freezing for 3 days in a row. So they had every man, woman, and child outside sweeping out the storm drains because they said that if we didn't and all that stuff melted, we would probably be underwater. So that was sort of a 72-hour party, if you wanted to call it. I mean, just constant caffeine and sweeping and using everything you had, a stick, a broom, a shovel, whatever. Because once the snow melts, you get to see what's got trapped under it. Oops. And that can all clog up those drains. So that was a very interesting thing that you don't normally see in other places, but that was one crazy place I lived. This whole country's crazy. I'm sure you can tell me stories about where you're at in the left coast. And
Oh, over here in California, there's too many. Usually, sometimes outside, you'll just see like just crackheads and homeless people every day. Actually, it's not even a lot. It's just there's certain parts where it's worse than others. Well, I live in a town where it's not as bad as other places are. We're about 2 hours away from LA, so most things that are generally bad with California, like Los Angeles and San
mhm.
Francisco and Sacramento, we don't really have to deal with all that. But then again, it's still California, so we still get all the problems here. Like we don't really have some conventional things other people have here. We
Ah,
mostly have to drive out 30 minutes down the hill for like the other stuff that we don't have here. We have here like just your basic banks and restaurants and general places people work. That's it. Most people would call this town boring by every stretch of the imagination, but sometimes I guess boring is better. Sometimes when you're getting like older because you like stability and the exciting young life you had is not as attractive when you get older because you're like, hey, I just sometimes I just like peace and quiet, you know.
So you want to skip the drama pit.
Well, there's that's actually the crazy part is that since it's
Mhm.
so boring here, sometimes people just create drama out of nothing, like just straight
Yep,
nothing. They'll like I'm pretty sure most states have this where like there's Facebook, and I'm pretty sure there's a Facebook group for a lot of towns and cities and
yep,
places
yep.
everywhere. We have one here. I'm pretty sure you have one for your city where people will go like to supermarkets and say they had a bad experience, and you go and interact with that said person that's not like that at all because they probably just wanted to. I don't know. People just are bored and they just cause drama for no reason. Like literally, just nothing happened, and they'll just say something. They'll be like, "Hey, I woke up this morning and I saw a black guy outside." I'm like, "All right, I don't know. Didn't know this was news, but sure. Thanks for saying. Thanks for telling me. Glad to know
When
that black
I
people live in the 21st century."
I lived in one small town in South Dakota that was very, very, very small. Everybody knew everybody, and half the people there were related to each other. And nothing happened there. And the library was like a one room schoolhouse. There were no library cards. They were like, if you're taking out a book, we know who you are, and we'll see you when it's due. So there was no drama there for the longest amount of time, and people talked about things that had happened like 10 years ago. And then I was there, and there was a 5.5 hour hostage standoff. Wow! And it happened, and both of my workplaces were next door to each other, and it happened in one of the workplaces, and then the guy went outside, and then there was a car chase and everything like that. But people from Facebook were telling those of us who were hiding inside, you know, be careful, he's coming around to this window and this and that. It was crazy. I didn't realize that, but people who were across the street from the building were watching it and telling us all these things. So it's crazy. But now I'm in a place where some things happen. And of course, Facebook is,
Mhm.
you know, has the same type of drama that you refer to, but not all of us get into that.
How big is your town? Our town, I think it's like 40,000 people here. Max, I think 50K, probably max, maybe on a good year if a bunch of people move here.
Yeah, I think that we're probably in the early 20s, and this is the Rust Belt. And the Rust Belt used to have steel mills and all these other things like that.
Mhm,
And then all of those industries left.
mhm.
And then because they left, about 1/3 of the people left. Because so now we have loads of empty buildings, empty factories, and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But then
That-
the cool part about that is that those of us starving artists and stuff like that have come here and are starting to create cool things in these empty buildings. And so I run around town, I do this little thing I call the sidewalk report, where I take pictures of buildings and I ask people, hey, what is this? What was this? Or whatever. What's the backstory?
Hmm.
And I put that up on Facebook. And then people tell me the stories about the buildings. But I found this one building, I called it the White Castle because it's really big, it's white, and then it has, um, there's pictures of it. I put it on my Facebook, and we can share that link with everyone. Um, and I said, okay, so tell me, what's the backstory on the Castle? And it turns out a bunch of people who work with clay and stuff like that, who make pots and dishes and all kinds of cool stuff out of clay, they have taken that building over, and they're going to be doing their artwork in it and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So people are, taking over these old places and fixing them up and turning them into, all kinds of different stuff around here. So it's gradually coming back to life. Um, and you can find some really, really strange things in the thrift shops here. So I'm going to introduce to you my first find when I was thrifting, one of my favorite things out here. This is Mr. Pumpkin, okay?
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
Look,
he's rather cheerful, and he's made out of foam, I think.
looks
Anyway, so they
looks
had
like
they had
he's
about
surprised.
did I wake you up with that?
I think so. Yeah.
But they had about 12 of them, all positioned around this thrift shop. It was kind of like the elf on the shelf effect. You had all these
Hmm.
pumpkins sort of staring you down.
Hmm.
And so I had to take one, and I'm going to use it at a Halloween event soon. But I thought I'd show you Mr. Pumpkin.
That's gonna definitely scare the kids. I'll give you that one. That
Well, some of
but to
us
be
grown up too.
Yeah, I will say that at least it will give you that reaction of like, "Oh, what's that?" Because
Yep.
usually you have artifacts like or things like that, and people will look at it and go like, "Hmm, that looks pretty distinguishable." Because like most things are kind of standard and basic, but things that give off interesting facial expressions will be like, "Oh my goodness, wow!" Because like I don't know, some pictures just we had this promotional material for
Hmm.
Thor: Love and Thunder back when it dropped a couple years ago, and the
Okay.
Jane Foster cutout that we had at work would constantly just feel like it's staring into my soul. I just couldn't even look at it anymore. I was like, okay, I feel like this
It's like you have
person
a
just
stalker.
yeah, literally just staring at me every day for the past month. It was weird. WZ said, "Cute pumpkin, uh, just just to get ahead of you, MSK. Please don't harass this nice woman." What? He's talking about flattering. She flatters me. That's not. That's how that works. Oh my goodness, women flatter me. Good Lord. Uh, so moving on in life, what
Yes.
else happened after that? So you lived in a bunch of places. At one point, you lived in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
So how was
Yeah.
that?
I met a lot of nice people in Atlanta, but I couldn't stay there. I mean,
Mm,
um, there the one of the things I saw one time the cops were chasing
mhm,
somebody, like there was some kind of drive-by or whatever, and the cop opened up the back of his car, and this drone came out, and the drone just chased the guy. So on the one hand, you're like, wow, they got all the toys, like this is really
mhm,
cool. But on the other hand, they have all the toys because they need them.
mhm,
So it was a little too much drama down there for me. So then I threw a dart at the map, and I wound up here in the Rust Belt. But I went to Atlanta after one of the snowiest winters in South Dakota, where that was where we had that 8 feet and it was all going to melt at once and stuff. And when you're cooped up in your apartment for a long time, you have to find something
mhm.
to do and get good at it. And so,
Sure. Mhm,
or else you'll go crazy. So what I did is I started writing books there. That's what I did during blizzard seasons, but I missed, you know, human contact. I missed walking and stuff. And then I moved down to Georgia where it was so much hotter and no snowflakes at all and everything. It was like culture shock and tons of people. That was also culture shock. Um, I think there's more four-leggers in South Dakota than there are two-leggers. Um, all kinds of critters. You see things you can't identify. There were mountain lions in this one town I lived in.
mountain lions. Holy
Yeah, mountain
crap.
lions.
Oh
Yeah,
God. Mm-mm.
yeah.
Nope. I'm not dealing with that. Nope.
My
You
my
just look too adventurous.
my friend who never called off for work
Mhm,
ever, and the whole like 72 years she was working at this place, or pretty close to that. She called in one morning and she said, there's a mountain lion on my car, and
mhm,
I think I should stay inside, and so I'm not going to come in today. It's like, you think you should stay inside? Yeah.
mhm.
But so anyway, I was down in Georgia for a while. The farther south you go, the bigger the insects get.
Okay.
I mean, some of them you hear them before you see them. Eek. So I had to get used to that again. I had
Mhm,
lived in the South before, but you know, when you're living in some of the places where it snows all the time and stuff, you rarely see anything like that. But anyway, so now I'm in the Rust Belt, and where all kinds of stuff happens and lots of renewal and stuff, but I continue to write down here. I got myself in a good habit of doing that during the blizzards and such. And it was interesting. I was really itching to just get out and be around people and stuff. So I left South Dakota, go to Georgia, and what happens like 3 months later? The pandemic. It's like
mm,
stay inside, don't. see anybody. Where,
So
you know,
how was that experience then? Because we were locked up for about what, a couple years
yeah,
max,
yeah.
actually. So I imagine someone like you who likes getting out and interacting with people to a certain extent, that must have been a huge bummer for a little bit there.
Well, I had the practice of living in blizzard season, in South Dakota and stuff, where you're like pretty much walled off for 9 months, except for the things you have to do, like you have to go to work. And, you know, so I mean, I already had that experience, so I knew how to, be alone for long periods of time. And I had my, writing. So when the pandemic came around, I did that. And I, worked when they would allow us. I worked for a caterer, and we had a really interesting job come in. All of our jobs disappeared. They're just simply not going to allow like 500-person weddings and stuff like that. All of a sudden, and all the venues closed. Like if you were going to have a, you know, big wedding at the Botanical Gardens, sorry, Botanical Gardens closed. All of the bookings, sorry, can't, no weddings, no nothing. So everything was shut, and we got this contract in. It was the only contract that we had. Apparently, all of those cruise ships that were out there, the government was sending the cruise ships to military bases. And all those people on the cruise ship had to be quarantined until they could be, determined that they did not test positive, and then they would be allowed to go.
Ooh.
So these people who had been on this super luxury cruise, who had been eating things like lobster tail and prime rib every night and stuff like that, they were sent to live in this old army barracks in Georgia that wasn't even air conditioned. And the government gave us food to give them, and we had to give them like 2 shipments a day of food. And it was government surplus food. It had all these, the boxes had all these labels on it saying donated by the United States government and stuff. And so this cruise ship, I think, had a couple hundred people on it. So they're in this army barracks, and they're fenced in also. I mean, can you imagine going from being on this cruise ship, eating whatever you want, playing cards, doing whatever you feel like, swimming pools on the cruise ship, all that, to all of a sudden like being in this mosquito laden army barracks with no air conditioning.
Oh
And
no,
then,
the certain virus was a shock to a lot of people, and I would say the world is still not really back to where it was before it happened. Like you look at something like just movies, that
yeah,
hasn't even got the attendance records that it had pre
right.
the virus. Actually, like you have people going out a lot more, which is good. And I told people
Yeah,
this because a lot of people thought that more people would just stay in because they got used to it. That 2 years is not enough for that.
right.
People like just by design. I don't really like going out as much, but by like just our human nature, we just like going out and doing things and meeting new people. It's just a human nature thing. So that wasn't going to stop anybody. And to be fair, it didn't stop anybody because time Christmas and holiday season rolled around, people just scattered out and really wanted to get out. So
Well,
it was nice to have it over.
we wound up giving them the type of food that you get at a gas station.
Hmm.
Those like the salt, the crackers that have the fake cheese in the middle and
Oof.
stuff. So we would have to put one of those in each little box, and then um, you know, a granola bar in each box and stuff, and that's kind of what they ate for a little while there. They went from
Yeah.
shrimp and lobster tail and prime rib to those trucker sandwiches. That's what we call those cracker and cheese things, and granola bars.
So a lot of people wouldn't know this, but you've been around for a long time because
Yes.
people wouldn't know this because you look great for your age. Actually, you're
Thank you.
50 years old, right?
I'm going to be 60 in a few months.
60. That's
Hmm.
crazy. So that means you were born in the 70s.
No, I was born in 1964.
1964. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. So you've seen the end of the 60s era. You were there for the
right,
entire 70s era, 80s
right,
era, 90s
right,
era, early 2000s, the 2010s, and
right,
now you're gonna and that you were there in the 20 to 2020, and then now
right.
you're obviously at the point where you're 5 years into the early 2020s.
Yeah.
So since you've lived all these decades, which was your favorite one to live in then?
I think I think for most people, um, when I've read memoirs and stuff like that, the coming of age time, I mean, the time when you're leaving high school and when you are truly in charge of your own life for the first time. I mean, the thrill kind of wears off after a little while. I'm sure you know
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
But the first time when you have like your first apartment and you are in control of your life, I mean, I think pretty much everyone points to that as um a high point.
Hmm.
That here they just gave me the steering wheel. This is great.
Hmm.
And now I'm going to show them what they'll, you know what I'm saying? Because you knew everything. But anyway, so for me, that was kind of a high point. And my book with the spicy title, Sex, Death, and Diane, that one covers like when I'm best friends in my friend with my best friend in a small town where nothing ever happens. And one of us, hello, goes to the city to go to
Hmm.
college and a big city and, wow, you know, uh, all kinds of drama and everything like that. And one of us stays in the small town where nothing ever happens.
Hmm.
Hmm. So it would be a really boring book if nothing happened, as you know.
Yeah.
And so something happened.
Mm.
In fact, a lot of things happened because uh, I graduated when a lot of things were going on. I
Mhm.
mean, the AIDS virus was, just sort of making its debut. And so it was the same craziness and confusion that was happening. Um, it had a lot of similarities to the COVID time
Yes.
when COVID first started to come out, and everyone's like, uh-oh. And then all of a sudden we have to modify our lifestyle, and all of a sudden we don't have as much freedoms as we thought we had. And,
Mhm.
and the virus is going to end on the virus's timetable, not when you want it to leave. And so it was a big education, especially when you're just out of the house, you just got your apartment, you've got the steering wheel now,
Yeah.
it's your life. And then all of a sudden this thing pops up and it's like, actually, no, you're not in charge. There's some higher power or whatever that is in charge, and
Mhm.
you better kind of wake up and realize that you're not in charge. And
Hmm.
so that, and then the in the very beginning of COVID, which I'm sure folks from your generation and younger may remember, there was comments being made about the people who got it. Like, oh, well, she was old and she was diabetic. Almost it was like blaming the victim and stuff. And and then my family's Italian, and in Italy, in some towns, no funerals, mandatory cremations and stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because it wasn't just how we
Yeah.
were dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
It was how the rest of the world was dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and then some of the, stronger armed towns and stuff like that in Italy, lockdown means lockdown.
Oh yeah.
Curfew means curfew.
Mm.
They're not playing, you know. And it was kind of very big difference from here. Like we're very individualistic here. And some people I know who who lived in some of the Asian countries, like wherever you went, you would have to sort of show your ID and you would have to have this on your phone and stuff to show if you were vaccinated and things like that. Wow. I mean, here, some people vaccinated, some people didn't. And, you know, we're, we're still going through that. But in my book with the spicy title, Sex, Death, and Diane, there was all kinds of insinuations about if someone got AIDS or if someone looked sick, you know. There were all kinds of suspicions and all kinds of crazy things that were happening to those people who first, got sick during that time. But there was a fantastic thing that came out from the activists of that generation, and they were not really given credit at this for this at all. Um, what they did is they really, really pushed and pushed to make sure that people who are really sick, regardless of what you have, um, that you can try experimental drugs. You can try a new drug that, and
Mm,
they sped up the approval processes on medications and stuff. So these folks who demonstrated um, during the time of the AIDS epidemic and stuff, they
yeah.
saved a lot of people. They really pushed for faster clinical trials, faster approvals for medications and things like that. And, people who didn't even have AIDS, like someone who has like leukemia or other conditions and stuff, everyone benefited from their activism, but um, they're not front page, front and center. So they didn't really get any credit for that. So big shout out, to all of them who helped all of us.
Mm. So, what's the type of book you generally write? What's your preferred genre? Because that would be more like a slice of life book. That's what people would call it nowadays, which would, I guess, be called adventure. In the novel
Yeah, it's,
genres.
semi memoir, whatever that was. And you can't
Mhm.
write your memoir twice. So obviously I had to graduate and move on to other things. It's time for my next prop, I see. Hello.
Oof.
Okay, this is the base.
Mhm.
And I have been told by others that it is military science fiction. And it's basically these scientists are at this very, very remote military base. If you're in the military and you're smart and you kind of stand out at your job, like this guy's good, he really knows his stuff. Every 3 years, as you know, the military kind of sends people to another base or whatever. Well, if you're really good and they're kind of noticing that you're not a slacker and that you're really, really good at something, that you really, really know something, someone's going to tap you on your shoulder and then you're going to get sent to that base, the one in the book, the base. And you are going to work on cutting edge, um, top secret projects. And so these are military scientists. They're in the middle of nowhere in this base. And, they're experts in their narrow little field. Like one of the guys is a military entomologist. And what that means is he's an expert on insects. And so he designs, um, weaponry and also vehicles and stuff that are based on insect anatomy. Now, it's not too much of a stretch to look at a helicopter and then see the similarities to a dragonfly. Am I right? And there's other bugs. So anyway, so he's called the bug man. He has to work with these other experts that are experts in their design and in their field, and they have to all collaborate together and come up with this project and do it by the given deadline. Now, here comes the fun part. There are spies and thieves that would like to steal their ideas. Really evil people. I mean, you can imagine if they're making this really cutting edge device that perhaps another country would want it. Maybe the cartels would want it. There's a lot of people who might want some brand new, really expensive idea and for their own purposes, which are not really good. So it's sort of a war between the spies and the scientists. But unlike most American cinema and stuff like that,
Mhm.
I think the gun is overdone. It's time to retire it. I think we need to fight with other things. And that's what I like about sci-fi, that, some of the characters have a whole different arsenal. It's
Mhm.
not all, you know, pull a trigger, boom, done. And so basically, the scientists are like super intelligent, and they have been disciplining and reading and really working on their craft since they're kids, like just fascinated with something and always
Mhm.
studying that. And the villains, they don't care about anything but making money. And so it's sort of this tug of war. The book is going to be a series. The second book is already written and going through the rest of the process with that. But as you can see, the first book exists. It's real, folks. And so, and I am adapting it to a screenplay. I am hoping to make it, a series that people can stream and watch. And but it's a lot of fun because I get to study different types of science, because I have to do a lot of research for this. I don't want someone saying, you don't know, you know,
Yeah.
you don't want to insult your audience. You want things to be correct.
Yeah.
And so I had to study insects for quite a while.
Oh gosh, imagine that was fun.
Yeah. I'd have to sit there and on my computer and then say, is this bug capable of surviving in the area where these guys are working? Otherwise, I mean, someone could just say, what are you doing? I mean, that's a joke.
I did that for sharks a lot, to learn
Mm,
about different types of sharks, actually, various
mhm,
different forms of them. You'll learn that quickly certain things that are said are completely untrue and can never happen versus things that are true. Or, you know, you'll watch like videos of people being put in situations and they'll be like, well, this isn't happening. Well, that's because there's various reasons why that isn't happening. So I'll give people an example. When you see those videos on Facebook Reels where people are in like, they're diving and they have like fish they're giving the sharks, like the big tiger ones. Well, the reason why they don't straight up attack you is because they're not like that. Sharks are
mhm,
solitary creatures that like to basically attack something that they see alone, because they realize they can get into it and kill it very quickly and then leave. It's like it's a very thing like a serial killer. A serial killer is just going to come up, kill you, and leave. That's it. So
mhm.
they're not going to attack you in a group because that's not what they're going to do in general. It's not even their nature. So when people say things like, well, I was in this group of these sharks and they attacked, well, yeah, they're not going to do that. They just won't do that. It's not in their nature. They're more of a solitary secret creature that likes to hit you from behind. So you learn various things about animals when you actually do deep dive into them. Like, man, I think I did it for like lions and tigers at one point. Oh my God. Thank God. Animals are something I'm not interacting with ever. Because could you imagine like interacting with a lion? Couldn't do it. Not for me. It's a little bigger of a cat than I'm used to, honestly. I like those smaller ones.
Well, I do remember in South Dakota and some of my living experience, and I did visit the base out there, um, did some research and stuff.
Mhm.
But in South Dakota, I mean, there's a fair amount of snakes.
Oh yeah, I
And
can't do snakes. No, no. Snakes creep me out. I'm not like scared of them, but they just look too
yeah,
freaky looking. I couldn't do
no,
it.
you can't tell what they're thinking. I mean, you can look at a dog and you could sort of say, okay,
Mhm.
um, he's not agitated. He looks like he's in a happy mood right now or whatever. And you could be right,
Mhm.
most of the time on that one, but you have no clue what a snake is
Mhm.
thinking. But I remember one time I was walking with a friend, like she really wanted to walk with me. I walk a lot. And she said, I just found out I have diabetes. I need to walk with you. Most people hate walking with me because I walk fast. And so I said, okay, but if you need me to slow down, let me know. And we were going to go up this hill in South
Mhm.
Dakota. And so we start going up the hill, and she's getting tired. And there's this big rock, and so she sits on the rock. She scooted a few feet ahead of me, and she sits on this rock. And I look at the rock, and it looked like the surface of the rock was moving.
Hmm.
And I was like, "What is that?" So I put on my real glasses, and all these snakes were sunning themselves on the rock. So I didn't want to make her panic. Like, she was facing me and she was talking about, it's just something I don't even remember
Mhm.
what she was talking about. And I just said, okay, Pat, I need you, don't turn around, and I need you to walk towards me nice and slow. And then, as soon as you get a little bit closer, then you can speed up. But, it's time for you to stand up and walk towards me. And don't turn around. So of course, what does she do? Like, she stands up and she turns around and she sees all those snakes, and then she runs like a bat out of hell down the hill. So she was down there in the bottom of the hill with her little asthma inhaler, like like this. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh,
So yeah, that's my South Dakota. And then people said, the rattlesnakes, especially, they say, they like taking a sun bath. And so you just gotta, watch out for that. And I'm like, oh,
hmm. So, what animals have you been like besides snakes? And you said mountain lions and well, usual cats and dogs. What other animals have you seen since you've been in a lot of the parts of the East Coast?
let me see. Everyone in Pennsylvania has seen a deer. In South
Mm,
Dakota, they have a lot of things that look like deer, and I'm not able to distinguish them. Fortunately, there's no need for that because they're all vegetarian. What you need to worry about in the animal kingdom is, you know, hmm, what likes meat, especially what might like my mate, me. And so that's where I sort of draw the line. If I remember um, I had been in, someone had broken into our building. And so I was very jumpy after that. And I went the next morning very, very early to go vote. And I heard steps behind me, and I was nervous. I was like, what is that? So I crossed the street, and the steps are still behind me. And I'm like, oh, this is not cool. And so I'm walking faster, and I hear it sounds like maybe more than one person. And I didn't live in the greatest town, and I was like, okay, this is not cool. So I turned around, I yelled something very bad at a very, very bewildered, very, very big deer-like creature. And I'm like, oh, that's what was following me. And then I was told, well, they eat vegetables, kids. I mean, they just eat tree leaves, bark, grass. He couldn't care less about you. He probably followed you because he thought you knew where you were going. I don't know.
yeah. There's a friend's house where he has all these animals. He has dogs, horses, chickens, and goats, like the billy goats that'll make the sounds. They had a little family and they were looking at us, and one of them like headbutted the other one to get closer to us. I was like, what an asshole. Like he just insulted his other fucking brother probably just to get closer to us. You know? I think chickens are awesome. They just walk around and look at you like you're stupid. What else? What
Um,
animal could you like?
well, in South Dakota, a friend of mine was raising fainting goats.
Mm,
And so what happens with these goats is if something spooks them, and that can be anything from a siren
yeah.
or a car honking its horn or something like that, the goats faint. And so you see these goats and they're all kind of happy and they're frolicking around the pen and something like that. And
Mhm.
then in the distance, like maybe a plane makes a noise or something like that. And then all of a sudden, poof, they all faint and they're on the ground.
Oh, I've seen
So
that
if you
before.
don't if
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
know that, yeah, if you don't know that they can do this, it could be like, huh, what happened? Quick, call the vet and stuff. And then about 5 minutes or so, they all get up and they all shake it off. Uh, but that was kind of funny. As for chickens, I worked under a crazy chef. And by the way, chef is a four-letter word. And yes, a lot of them are crazy, not all of them.
Mm.
But this guy was a crazy chef, and he said that if you have the lights on, um, chickens will eat. They won't observe like a regular sleep awake so much pattern. They will just keep eating. So when the farmers want their chickens to get fat faster, they just, leave the lights on, leave the food out, and these guys just keep chomping.
So, how many books have you gotten to be published so far? I know you had Sex and Death, and you have the science fiction one right there. Any
The
other books have
base.
you done, actually?
Okay, the published books, it's Sex, Death, and Diane.
Yeah.
And then the second one is the base book one. That's
Yes.
published, that's out there. And the audiobook will be coming out next week.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. And the sequel for the base is done, it's copyrighted, it's ready. But we're just going to let that one, since the base book one came out in July, I'm thinking we're gonna let the base book two come out like maybe January.
Yeah, it's
Just
a nice little gap there. Don't really, you want to give time for people to read and
yeah,
experience the first book. So when they get another one in the series, it feels kind of special. Okay.
yeah. And so and then I have been on and off working on another one, which is very different. But what happened with the base, the reason why that became a series is that some of the readers contacted me and they said, we don't want this to end and we don't want the bug man just to disappear and die. And he has, I think, the most fans. And they also like the
Mhm.
real one of the really bad villains, Venus. She is wicked, wicked, wicked. And they didn't want to see it end, and they didn't want to see the bug man die or Venus disappear. And so they said, um, you know, can you do a sequel? So I did a sequel, and now I'm doing the adapting to screenplay type of thing with that, and that is where I'm at right now.
Hmm. So, have you did any in-person book signings? I know you have one coming up, but have you did others in the past actually?
No, I haven't done ones in the past.
Mhm.
That's probably a lot of that is a function of that, the COVID time and all that other
Oh yeah.
stuff. Yeah. But I am really psyched. I'll be doing a book signing at a big sort of comic and collectibles convention.
Mm.
So that has a lot of opportunities for fun. There's going to be a wrestler there and stuff. That much I know about. So get to meet a lot of people that are somewhat in my community, um, and I'm planning to put together a small game show at my table. And I found some books of comic trivia and some other things like that. And then I have that crazy little thing I write, the sidewalk report, where on Facebook you'll see it if you type my name in, Dante Terese, where I just run around town, I take pictures and I say, hey, what building is that? And this and that.
Mhm.
So I think I'll incorporate that into um, the game show. So my table won't just be straight up like me writing my name on a book or selling a book. I mean, it's going to be like every 15 minutes or so. Okay, somebody pick a question. You have your choice. You could pick
Mhm.
comic sort of questions, trivia, or from the sidewalk report question. And let's see, uh, if you answer it right, then you get to pick from the big, really, really big prize bucket. Pick your prize.
So,
So add a little excitement to it instead of just being like, okay, here's my book, buy it. I'll write my
yeah,
name on it.
pro-
I want to
yeah,
have fun with these people.
yeah. You're like you want to spice it up. Every once
Yeah.
in a while, missionary's good, but got to spice it up with something else every once in a while.
Yep. Well, I mean, my other profession that I did for many, many years, I was a baker and pastry chef. And so when you're baking, you have to remember to put the right amount of spice in. See, too much spice, people don't like that.
Yeah.
But just a little bit of spice that's just kind of a little spark on the tongue and it wakes you
Mhm.
up. And so basically, I kind of have that same approach to life. Like if I'm just sitting there at a table and there's a bunch of books on it, like, okay, buy a book and I'll write my name on it, Okay, I mean, it's nice and then you can talk to people and stuff, but if I throw in a little bit of a game show in there and, uh, let's try some comic book trivia and stuff like that. I mean, who knows? And then you can win something. That might be that's what I'm going with right now.
So these are questions that I ask all of the indie creators, whether it be an indie comic book creator, indie author. So we'll start here. What was the final nail in the coffin to get you to write, that got you to actually write something down? What were you inspired by? Because a lot of people are inspired by Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Chronicles of Narnia. Some people might have been inspired by Twilight, which is interesting to say the least. That's that. So, what was the author that inspired you to write? Was this an author you
Hmm.
were reading the books growing up?
I think if I had to say some of my favorite authors, I mean, Jimmy Carter. I mean, he wrote a book called An Hour Before Daylight, where it's kind of his life story. And he started it out, you know, as a grandson of peanut farmers.
Mhm.
And he talked about what it was like, to get up an hour before daylight and get to work on a working farm. And this was back before they had the kind of machinery that they have now.
Mhm.
I mean, it was really backbreaking work, and you'd be out there in all kinds of weather and everything like that.
Mhm.
And the discipline and stuff. I mean, no matter how sick you are, you get up and you go to work. And no, you can't call off. No, you can't stand in the corner and text. I mean, you got to go to work. You know what I'm saying? The cows need fed, and all these things need to happen. The harvest has to come in because a big storm is coming tomorrow and stuff. There's just no excuses. I mean, so he was raised with that discipline, and he saw so many things. Like he talked about how um, one of the first times he ran for office, um, they they found out, and he was very upset. He didn't win, but he found out that there were a lot of dead people on the rolls. True story. So anyway, they actually looked into it, and it was true. And then they said, okay, next election, I mean, you have to be dead for like six
Mhm.
days or something. And so just all kinds of voting irregularities and stuff. When I read, and I recently reread Rosa Parks' book, her autobiography.
Ooh.
And everyone knows that, she's the lady who didn't get up out of her seat in the bus.
Mhm.
But there's so much backstory on that. Like she married a man, and the two of them were in activism from just a very young age, just in activism, um, and trying to change things for the better. And so she talked about trying to register to vote for 16 years and being turned down. And so when they finally got back to her one year and they said to her, okay, we'll let you vote this time, but you didn't vote for 16 years, so you have to pay the poll fee for all of those years that you didn't vote. And then we'll let you vote in this one. And that was just spellbinding to me that
Yeah.
type of thing happened. And she talked about just so many other things that she encountered. And her life, unfortunately, in the history books sort of boil people down to smaller and smaller sentences. And so she is remembered as the lady that didn't give up her seat. And most people think that she sat in the very front of the bus, but actually the buses, the middle to the back is where people of color were allowed to sit, and the front was reserved for whites. And so she was actually in a middle seat of the bus, but they said if more whites came in, that people of color had to give them their seats. So she was, sitting in the middle, more whites came in. And so the bus driver told the other people, everyone, get to the back or get out. And she sat there. So I think sometimes when history sort of boils people down to a sentence or less than that, we miss out on so much of their lives and stuff. But her book, her autobiography, I recommend that to everyone. I mean, I know I'm hawking my book, but I'm here to hawk Jimmy Carter, An Hour Before Daylight, Rosa Parks, her autobiography. Just incredible how far we have come. And I'm hoping that we don't go backwards. Because, I mean, just some of the things that Jimmy Carter witnessed and that she witnessed, I mean, they're straight out with it. I mean, they tell you, and they're not lying. I mean, when you go and Google this thing and that thing,
Yeah.
the evidence is there to support everything that they say. They're not making stuff up. They're not fiction writers. When you say autobiography, it means nonfiction.
Mhm.
And truth is stranger than fiction. And, sometimes it's pretty harsh, but I mean, but she and him, they both really had a lot of trials and stuff. And they came through it. It didn't scar them to the point that they were not able to enjoy their life, not able to be friendly, not able to be funny anymore or anything like that. They are just positive people that keep pushing for change. And Jimmy Carter turned 100 the
Yes.
beginning of this month, and he voted. I think he voted about 2 days ago. So he's still very passionate about, achieving what he, believes in and stuff. And it's really good to, see people that are on fire and that, you know, I mean, you don't have to be, you know, uh, on fire all the time. I mean, he's also a tremendously positive person.
Yeah.
He wrote tons of books and stuff. Very passionate.
The other thing I'll ask is characters, because every great book is going to need protagonists, antagonists, supporting characters. So we'll start with this one. How do you go about crafting a main hero for your books? Like, what is the thought process you have on it?
Well, the thought process I have behind characters is, um, for example, the hero has to be someone I would want to live next door to. I mean, we've all been around villains, and we all see how sometimes people are rewarded very, very well financially for doing the wrong thing,
Mm-hmm.
and just for having no soul and like taking advantage of people. I mean, sometimes landlords do this, sometimes insurance companies do this. I mean, not just them, but I mean, there's other people that we've encountered in our lives that make a lot of money badly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, would you rather live next door to the villains in the
Mm-hmm.
base, or would you rather live next door to the military scientist who's trying to raise his two kids to be good people and worked really, really hard to um, achieve the expertise that he has?
Mm-hmm.
So, these are the things I think about, because you have to think about, and you have to take responsibility for these characters that you create. Are you making it cool to be a villain, making it cool to rip people off, or are you, letting the reader decide, of course, who their favorite one is and stuff? But I think everyone loved Darth Vader as a villain. And you can go up to someone on the other side of the world and they'll go, oh, they'll be
Yeah.
able to imitate him and stuff. I mean, everybody knows Darth Vader. Everyone loves Darth Vader. He's a great villain, very well crafted. Um, but they might not want to blow up galaxies like Darth Vader. They'll be like, no, we'll just stick with the voice that James Earl Jones gave him and the breathing and stuff. I did turn the phone off,
Oh,
and
it's fine.
yeah,
You have your husband
oopsie.
texting you.
No, I have, okay, yay. My appointment, one of, I don't know why the volume didn't go down this thing. It's a new cell phone. It is teaching me.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay, well, I have two recipients at the church. I told you about what I do there.
Yeah.
Um, I have two recipients today, 12:30 my time, and one of them just canceled. I do, for those of you who don't know, my other life, I uh, do these donation rooms with people where they come in if they need things and we give them things. So I have to unlock this big, massive church and let people come in and take stuff. So one of my appointments canceled. We'll see if the next one holds. Now, so we did the character question, and I'm sorry I couldn't, I don't know why the volume doesn't go off
That's
on that when
okay.
it says it's off. It's teaching
Oh,
me.
well, since you're a bit older, on your phones, you would have it on vibrate. So there's this thing called on your volume. You know where the volume button is, where you turn it up and down.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
So on the volume button right here, it'll give you this bell right
Oh,
there, and you touch it. And once you touch it, you could put it on where the notifications are off, and you won't even hear it vibrate at all.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so
Gotcha.
you tap the bell. There's three options. There's
Yep,
notifications
yep.
on and the vibrate, and you just click the middle one. See, there you go.
Thank you, sir.
Ah, you learn something new every day,
Yes.
actually. So most books, people read them, and some of even the most legendary books, people the only thing they'll criticize is pacing. Sometimes bigger books can be a slog to get through. How do you make your books feel like they're not a slog to get through as far as pacing?
Let me see. I think the first book was sort of a learning process, and that one it was like off to the races. The story cut to the chase, and the story was happening pretty quick. Um, Now, as for the base and stuff, I sort of learned to control my impulses a little better and let it um, evolve a little bit more um, slowly.
Mhm.
Um, and you know, because to really set up the situation, because it was not typical surroundings. The first book, I mean, you know, small town, everyone has sort of experienced that on some level. I mean, either they were living there or they have relatives and they visited there and they got to see that. So, and everyone has had a best friend growing up and graduated and possibly took separate paths or whatever.
Mhm.
So there wasn't, you know, a real need to define the surroundings as much. But the base, you had to sort of define the surroundings because it's such a different, you know, type of thing that people may not have encountered.
Okay. So dialogue. How do you go about when your characters are talking to each other? Because most authors will use the word said or they heard, stuff like that. So do you usually have a habit of using the word said when your characters are having dialogue, or do you go about it in a different way?
Well, since the characters are very different, um, I have to imagine how this person would talk
Mhm.
and their mannerisms and stuff like that. All of that. It's all one package. Like not I I want the reader to be able to tell. I mean, if the 6-year-old daughter
Mhm.
of the scientist is, you know, witnessing something and talking about it, I want the reader to be able to tell that that is a 6-year-old talking about that. And so her vocabulary and my vocabulary are very different. And and then when the other person is talking, like one of the scientists, his vocabulary is going to be miles ahead of that kid. And when the villain's talking, they're going to use you know, different language, like
Mhm.
sometimes a little tough language and stuff like that. You know, and so you have to make the language fit the character. And so it isn't a one size fits all approach with the word said and, you know, stuff like that because, you know, the 6-year-old doesn't have all of her grammar and everything intact. And then the older ones have vastly different vocabularies because of what they do.
And then after that, what is your advice to authors out there as far as to improve? Because everyone always has various ways they want to improve. So if you could give any advice, what would that be?
I would say read.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, reading really helps me, especially mix it up. Don't read the same thing all the time. And I think I do tend to stick with autobiographies a lot. Um, but I'm not reading the same autobiography. I'm not reading only like sports football player autobiographies. You know what I'm saying? I'm mixing it up. Like Jimmy Carter was a former president. He was up until recently, a Sunday school teacher and son of a preacher. And so his book has a lot of theological insight and stuff. Um, and I mentioned Rosa Parks, and she came from very humble beginnings, and she was so lucky that she had a supportive husband. When she said, "I want to finish high school, I want, to finish getting educated," um, and they had to jump through so many hoops to allow her just to get something beyond an eighth grade education, um, which was standard for all of the rest of us. Um, so that was, just really when you read out different perspectives and good authors. Of course, I do read some junk too. Like I sometimes read celebrity books and stuff like that.
Aren't those usually pretty overrated by a lot of people's
Yes.
standards? Yeah, I
Yeah,
imagine.
like 100 pages, and it's all double spaced, and there's a blank page in between each paragraph.
They're
You
always
know,
like oversized hardcovers where it's yeah, and the pages aren't even the same size as the actual cover itself. It's gross.
well, we joke about that. A friend of mine says it's all fluff and no stuff, and
Mm.
occasionally you will encounter someone who's has um, a story to tell. Like I was really pleasantly surprised with Paul Stanley,
Mhm.
the bass player in Kiss. I mean, his book was really interesting.
Mm.
And some of the things that he went through and stuff. I mean, he was born without one of his ears. And here
Oh.
he is, like, a musician and stuff.
Mhm.
So, um, and, and then he's also a very gracious person. I mean, his sister had a lot of difficulties. And so their family wound up adopting his niece and raising her and seeing to it that she got educated and everything like that, and that she had a stable life. So he's a very gracious person. He's experienced a lot of things that us regular folk has. So I know he's rock royalty, but he had and then also traveling the world and talking about what it was like for him to be in all these different countries. And when I read Run DMC's um some of their book and stuff, they're huge in Japan. They're absolutely huge in Japan, and so was Kiss.
Mhm.
And so it's just, they had pictures of Run DMC, and you could Google this. It's a lot of fun. You'll see them in Japan, and there's all these people around them, and they all have the same outfit on.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of fun. But when Kiss went to Japan, it was the same thing. Everyone was dressed up like them.
God, could you imagine a Japanese person dressed up as a person from Kiss? Oh my goodness. That would be so
Yeah. Well, Kiss, and just in general, I mean, their shows, the audience does dress up like them. And I am probably going to see people dressed up like Kiss in this comic book signing event, because Kiss did have their own comic book, and the comic book community loves Kiss.
the other I think I watched a movie recently called It Ends With Us. It was a movie based off
Yeah,
a book by author Colleen Hoover, and I did actually buy the novel. It's over there. I ain't got a chance
yeah,
to read it yet because I am, reading novels is hard for me because I prefer having just pictures when I read books, honestly. So reading novels is a different experience when you have to like hone in on a page and there's no pictures to guide your mind, through what's happening. And Yeah, it's because do you think most authors are waiting for that, like the big paycheck? Because the guy that directed the movie, Justin Baldoni, he bought the book's rights to put it as a movie. Like, it feels like when I read through people's like synopsis of their books to like hook me to buy them, it feels like they're just kind of writing a hook for a movie to hope someone buys their book, trying to get that big paycheck. I can't really blame them though. It's a lot of money when people can splurge that much on you.
Well, I think there are people who, try to follow algorithms or whatever
Mhm,
to to get an audience share and all this other business stuff. Like there
mhm.
there are people who are like businessmen, businesswomen, whatever. And it exists in all the arts. I mean, there are AI is trying to write hit music now and stuff. They're trying to train the computers like people like it when someone hits a high note and holds it and stuff. And so it is showing up more and more in the arts where people are trying to sort of stick to a formula. And but the thing is ultimately with everything, not just the arts, but with elections and um, with everything, the audience decides. I mean, you can
Yeah.
sit there and you could be strategic and you could be calculating and you could try to aim this pitch for this person and do this and do that. But ultimately, if people don't want something, they don't buy it. If they don't want to listen to you, they won't. You know, that's just the way it goes.
So the other thing I'll ask is, how do you, as a, let's say, indie author, get people interested in your work? Because that's what you just said, which makes sense. Is there's so many people doing this, and the audience kind of gets to decide what they like. And the biggest problem with being a creator is to basically get people interested in a brand new person that they don't know when there's a bunch of other people already doing it and doing it better because of experience as well. So, what's your kind of way of getting people interested in your work?
Well, I go up to kindly folks who have their own podcast and say, "Hi, wanna have me come on? I'll talk to your audience with you." I try to reach out that way. And I mean, maybe some of the previous folks are better at what they do. Maybe some of them have deeper pockets than I do. I'm sure of that. But ultimately, the audience decides. That's just the way all these things go. And so, on that note, definitely thank you for exposing me to people because that's what us indie folk need. We need exposure. And so thank you for allowing me to expose myself on your show.
Oh God, if you were doing that, we'd have to be off camera for that. Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
okay.
So, what else is there? Oh, you said you were a chef at one point. I think you did.
Baker pastry chef.
So, would you consider? Did you have people try out your food actually?
Oh yeah, I when I worked for caterers and stuff, it got shipped out
Mhm.
to all different places. Yeah, and
Oh,
that's what I did a lot of, and I did restaurants too and stuff. So it's exciting. It's a lot of hours,
mhm.
um, but there it is. That's what you do.
So the last few things I'll ask. The first thing is, what are your top? So you said Rosa Parks and the one by the author's Jim. I forgot. And
Jimmy
yeah,
Carter.
Jimmy Carter. So what are your other favorite books of all time?
Okay, Jimmy Carter, An Hour Before Daylight. Rosa Parks, her autobiography.
Mhm.
Jesse Norman, um, very overlooked opera singer. Um, Fascinating because she wound up in Europe during the time where both sides of Germany were separated and stuff, and she just had so many experiences to tell from leaving this country, going abroad, and um, just seeing these walls break down and stuff like that. And so she was a really really fascinating. I tried. Okay, I really did try. Um, uh, I'm running late. I'll be right there.
Oof.
Okay, I'll be right over, and just give me like 5, 10 minutes. I'm sorry, but I'm very blessed to be in a very
Fine.
work carried over a bit, but we had a I'll be right there, I promise. Thank you. Okay, you got it. Bye.
Seems like you're
Well,
a popular person who wants all your they want your attention.
I got I put the middle swiper down. I'm going to have to investigate why the ringer went off, but I have someone now waiting at the church to get some necessities.
Okay, so we'll just wrap it up with the last two things, and these things are very quick. So the first one is, do you have anything planned coming up in 2024, going into 2025 that you want to let the audience know about?
Um, the audiobook is going to drop in about a week.
Mm.
Um, I will give you the website, Dante Terese. Just like it says under my picture. I don't know if it says that on there. Yeah, it does. Okay. Um, and come see what's happening. The books are on Amazon. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you for my gross lack of etiquette by answering a phone
Oh
during.
no, you're a bit
But I
older,
knew
so I'll have to teach you how to put the phone on no sound. If there's vibrate, no sounds, then you can hear all the sounds. It's always
I
that
will
third
do
option.
that. I will do that. And she's early for her appointment. So I didn't quite expect that, but
I think that's the saying, right? If you're early, you're on time, and if you're on time, you're late. I don't know. It's a saying in
if
Asian culture.
if you're not 5 minutes early, you're 5 minutes late.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
saying.
The last the last thing I'll ask is, do you have any shout outs you want to give to anyone in particular, and any other closing thoughts or statements before we end the show?
Let me see. Let me see. Shout outs. I really want to, say thank you to so many of the great authors that have inspired me. And I was able to name a few, but very, very thankful and grateful for our public library system in this country.
Mm,
They do so much for writers, and but they also do so much for the communities. They have programs in there for the kids and stuff. And so if you're living in a zip code that doesn't have the um, greatest school system, a lot of times the libraries, make up for that. And so really big shout out for the libraries. I'm so glad that they're here for all of us. And yeah, I think that's about all I can think of right at the moment. But and then very big shout out for folks like you who are supporting indie writers and letting us talk about what we do and
yeah, anytime.
appreciated.
And I wish I could go to your signing and wear a suit, and we just go out after that. But turns out I don't live in Pennsylvania, actually. Imagine it's me as the last guy there, and I have like flowers I could give you, and then I could just like we just hang out after that. It'll be a crazy day. But then again, that's in a fantasy. We don't live in fantasy, actually. We live in the real world where I
Yeah,
can't
we
just like
do.
can't just like teleport to a certain place. But let you go to your thing. So
Thank you.
thank you guys for checking out this episode of the MSK show, and we will see you guys later. Have a great night, everybody. See you guys.